everybody. I'm Scott Gentry from Brave New Coin, and I'm sitting here with Norbert Gerke of Tokyo FinTech.
Hey, Scott.
Hello, Norbert. How are you this weekend?
Very well, thank you.
Good.
This is our first episode.
It is, as a matter of fact. So anyway, you had a good week. You've been out there busy and networking and meeting a lot of people?
Yeah, I think it's the crunch, despite the fiscal year end in Japan. It seemed like there was quite a bit going on last week.
Big slowdown in the general marketplace, but obviously a lot coming out. So, but just before we get started, you've set up a pretty good group called FinTech Japan. Why don't you tell us a little bit about it? How did you get started with that?
Well, we started in June 2017 really to create a forum for people who are broadly interested in FinTech. And we felt at the time there wasn't really a forum here in Japan. 2 years later, it seems like, and we meet each other almost every night at different blockchain, crypto, FinTech, InsurTech meetups. But 2 years ago was probably much less so. And I think we hit a nerve with kind of the English-speaking population. And since then, basically have done quite a number of meetups. The community has grown to 2,300 people. The biggest one is yet to come, which will be tomorrow, April 1st.
Yes.
Collaborating with SBI and R3, and there's about 200 people signed up. So it's been good fun.
Well, essentially, SBI is doing quite a bit. Likewise, Rakuten, but SBI and their relationship with R3 and Ripple in general. So what are you expecting tomorrow night?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like SBI is trying to put their mark everywhere, right, and then claim this space. And I think some of the joint ventures seem to work very, very well. I think the R3 one probably being on the good side of that equation, SBI being a very early investor in R3, and with Munetoshi Yamada, who's been the only person for R3 formally here in Japan for the last 2 years, I think. Got some really good support from SBI, and it's only now that they're forming this joint venture entity. And we've seen other kind of investments where they've done something similar. They created a joint venture entity, but maybe have not put the kind of manpower, woman power behind it to really make traction. And so there's a joint venture entity, but maybe not that much business. So I think it depends on kind of how the joint venture partners engage naturally, what the outcome is. And R3 seems to be rolling well. And so we're excited about tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. Now, one of the things that we've been hearing this week and leading up through the period of March is a lot of the changes going on in the regulatory environment. As we saw the lead up during the bull market, there were a lot of ICOs, a lot of utility tokens being issued. That took on a bit of interest in Japan and elsewhere, and then there was kind of the big crash, as we all know about. And lately, the market's been shifting. There's been a lot of regulations thrown into place, a lot of revisions being discussed. As we know, the FSA has put out some revisions this year in March, and we expect that those changes will take effect over the course of this year for implementation during fiscal year 2020. What is one of the biggest changes you're seeing right now this year compared to last year, and then as we go through this year leading up to next year?
Well, I think the most notable thing is that kind of after the CoinCheck hack in January 2018, obviously there were lots of inspections of the existing exchanges, but we didn't see any approval of new exchanges. Right? There's all the approvals were basically at the end of 2017, and so that changed when CoinCheck, which got acquired by Monex, got the formal approval by the FSA in January. Which was exchange number 17. And then this week, the news on Monday with Rakuten Wallet and Decurrent as kind of I wouldn't even say the two new exchanges, because Rakuten had acquired Mina no Bitcoin, everybody's Bitcoin. So it's really Decurrent that's the first new exchange that we got, right?
Yes,
what did you think when you saw that news?
Oh, I was excited. I've talked to several people over at Rakuten over the past several months, as well as several people over at Decurrent for the past few months. I think Decurrent is very excited about the fact that they've gotten their license. I understand that come April 16th, they're expecting to go live. Mm-hmm. Not exactly sure what their expectations are from day one, but they put together a group of partners that I think there's about 20 major Japanese industrial level partners, whether it's East Japan Railways, Bic Camera, some of the Mitsuis. I think MUFG is involved in that group as well. One of the life companies, I can't remember if it's Nihon Seimei or Tokyo Fire and Marine, but about 20 partners. So when I spoke to them, one of their sort of missions over the course of the next few years to really become Japan's biggest utility exchange. But having said that, there's obviously going to be some competition. They're aware of what's going on over at Rakuten. They're aware of what else is going on in the rest of the market, and we're going to see a number of exchanges come online. Coin's been in the news. I think it was a couple of weeks ago, was in the Nikkei, and they're expecting some changes in licensing over the course of the next year. So a lot to look forward to, I think.
What's interesting with the current is like when I started looking them up, and like Internet Initiative Japan is like a 35% stakeholder, which kind of rang bells from the very first internet bubble.
Yes.
And I was a first fortunate and an unfortunate investor in that company, and when the bubble burst, it went like to
you mean you rode to the top and rode to the bottom as well? Huh?
Yeah, it's like just bought high, sold low.
Not a good
strategy.
Trip, right?
Not a good strategy. But so familiar name from that time. So it's interesting to see them kind of being kind of part of this new wave now as well.
Yeah. So one of the things I spoke about in the beginning is there's been this change of from the ICO phase into the initial exchange offerings against the backdrop of the oncoming STOs. And one of the things that we've seen with the initial exchange offerings is basically due to higher levels of scrutiny and sort of increasing SEC regulatory action, enforcement action. There's a lot of curiosity as to how this next market is going to roll out. But in the meantime, the initial exchange offerings actually offer kind of a nice little stopgap way to get to the market. And we'll see how that market actually materializes over the course of the next year. Well, I'm just getting used to it like a lot of people, but I guess the easiest way to describe it is from the perspective of, say, a token project, and it falls under the wing of an exchange, such as Binance, for example. And there are significant advantages to that. It gives them, say, access to better guidance, more experienced guidance, some game-changing publicity. If you launch on Binance, that's got to be a home run just to get on that exchange. What do they do, about $1 billion a year?
I mean, if you have a Binance token, it's one of the best performing tokens this year, right? And if you don't go into the very exotic kind of segment of the market, but Binance, like 2 months ago, before they started doing this Launchpad thing, they were like at $4 or something. What are now 16?
I think 16 or something like that.
4x in just a few weeks.
Bump since about January 27th. So there's some advantages for the company that's going to launch an IEO, and it's going to give them expert guidance, a lot of publicity from launching on an exchange. And on top of that, it's going to shift the burden of compliance more onto the exchange. It provides a greater or higher level of vetting compared to what we would find with, say, the standard ICO, which there really wasn't any vetting at all. It was just somebody standing on the corner and saying, I got a great deal here, and these are my directors, and that guy's that guy, or whatever. So, but the mechanism for Binance is, first of all, you have to own the BNB, the Binance coin, and they're working through a sort of a lottery basis. So, but let me go here though. The screening process is going to vary from exchange to exchange. I know that Binance, for example, refers to 4 essential criteria. One is the relative maturity of the project and its development. The readiness, how ready is it for large-scale adoption? Do they have a strong and committed team? And what is the potential benefit to the growth and development of the wider crypto ecosystem?
I mean, ultimately, this sounds a bit similar to the approach that the Financial Services Agency, the FSA here in Japan, has taken, right? Where they put obligation to list new coins, ultimately under due diligence of the exchanges. And all this legislation is somehow in the works, but kind of in the same way we've seen approvals for new exchanges this year. Hopefully we see some new tokens being traded in Japan as well, because there are only like 21 or so that we currently have listed on the Japanese exchanges.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is, as this STO market sort of emerges and falls under the various sort of SRO guidance, which is likely to come, we also see that the utility market itself has come under various forms of sort of SRO guidance and sort of regulatory understanding. And there's another group there called the Japan Cryptocurrency Business Association. So these two seem to be in lockstep. But I also understand that as the STO market emerges, there's a little bit of a push and a pull between, say, the Japan Securities Association or the Japan Security Dealers Association and the JVCEA, because on the one hand, you've got this big utility exchange, SRO, that apparently would like to get its leg over the STO market and become the SRO for that. And I think the Security Dealers Association here is kind of saying, no, we don't like that. What's your thought on that?
So what you're saying essentially is, if you're an STO, it is a security. It's a differently encoded form of a security. It's just a digital security essentially. And so any existing legislation that we have around securities in Japan should apply. That's the argument from the JSDA.
Correct. And so there's basically two major forms of law that are coming, not necessarily in conflict with each other, but in conflict with each other with respect to the JVCEA and a potential SRO for the securities market, which is going to be led, my guess is, by the Japan Securities Dealers Association. So I don't think these two trains are going to meet. Maybe not to the satisfaction and the happiness of the JVCEA, however.
And the, by now, 19 exchanges that are fighting for market share and revenue, of course. Which
increased competition.
Yes.
But one of the things that I think is very clear, though, in order to become an STO, you have to have a level 1 securities license here. So a lot of these companies, you look around people who might be engaged in various forms of securities distribution, they cannot actually participate in this STO market because they aren't authorized to work in solicitation, distribution, sales, or whatever you want to call it, of traditional securities. So this creates another divide, and my understanding also is that if you're going to engage yourself in the STO market as a Class 1 license holder, the order execution needs to be funneled through a proprietary trading system. So how many parties in Japan outside of the Tokyo Stock Exchange or the Japan exchanges have not only a level 1 license, but a proprietary trading system? My understanding is it's just SBI and KAIX. And one of the things we heard this week, for example, some of the people that we've been talking to, AnyPay is a perfect example. I think they're one of several companies that was hoping to get out there and to try to get into the STO marketplace, but subsequently they've decided to abandon that mission. They're going to concentrate just on the payments business. So we're going to see some of these advisory firms, people who had big dreams, as the institutional side comes into the market and starts to take this over. Some of these smaller advisory companies are most likely going to have to return to a more modest role as an advisor for utility tokens, involving themselves with utility exchanges and trying to launch the projects in that sort of a way.
Okay. So we've been now talking about 3 licenses essentially that are available there if you have the resources to apply and conduct the business. So we're seeing utility tokens, and we see the JVCEA kind of there. We see STOs and classic securities as governed by the Japan Securities Dealer Association, JSDA, and then there's a payments business and the payments license for those transactions as well. So if you want to cover kind of the whole universe, you need to have 3 licenses in essence.
I can't give you a definitive answer. My guess is the answer is yes. But as we see with the FSA and as we see with the Japanese government in general, there's often a heavy dose of gray between the black and the white.
Right.
So right now I think we're very much in this gray phase as the securities token legislation works its way through Parliament, as well as potentially some of the revisions to the settlements and payments law that was pushed through Parliament in April of 2017. So we're not exactly sure where we're going. We just have a general idea of the direction.
Scratching my head right now, it's like all still a little confusing with the different associations. So again, we have the JVCEA, Japan Virtual Currency Exchange Association. The person who came up with that name should be shot, right? I mean, it's like a 5-letter acronym. Couldn't make it any more complicated. But then we had the Japan Cryptocurrency Business Association,
correct,
JCBA. So
right.
They did 1 letter better.
Right.
Again, recap once more, please. Where do they fall on the spectrum, and where are the members, etc.?
Well, the membership for the JVCEA, from my understanding, is you have to be an exchange. Okay, so they've got level 1 and level 2 type exchanges, which is on their website. I don't know exactly how they are divided up, whether it's a licensing issue or not. But the JVCEA is effectively, from what I understand, the de facto regulator of the exchange, of the utility exchange market.
Okay.
The JCBA, the Japan Cryptocurrency Business Association, is actually offers a much broader membership opportunity. So, they meet on a monthly basis, and probably one of the benefits to them is access to all of the other members. But I actually have spoken to the JVCEA a couple of times, and one of the things that came up was obviously there is a concern on their side. They've discussed some concerns in the political concerns of having too much power vis-a-vis, say, the Japan Securities Dealers Association. And some people at the JVCEA have indicated that they would like a little bit more power than the Japan Securities Dealers Association wants to offer. The JSDA seemingly doesn't want to go there because I think it's in their interest, and they think it's in their interest to make sure that the regulatory environment is bolted down extremely tight. They don't want to see any of these accidents or fraudulent activity that has taken place in the past, whether it was CoinCheck and the hacking. They don't want to see any of this ICO level type fraud or opaque sort of relationships taking place. They're most likely going to apply a very strict understanding, or they're going to expect a very strict compliance with the securities law. How that eventuates, we don't exactly know yet. But the JVCA, the Japan Virtual Currency Exchange Association, actually told me in a social environment that they were concerned about the pressure that they were hearing from the JSDA, the Japan Securities Dealers Association, to the point that they had a rather fatalistic view that maybe STOs in general wouldn't take root in Japan, which I disagree with. I think, if anything, the Japanese government would like to see some of these exchanges take root in the local market. All of that business trading onshore through a Japanese exchange, and of course it's just a jobs creator. It's an economy booster. It's pretty much everything that they need, or one of many things that they need to turn this market around and keep it going stable for the next generation, unlike the Heisei period overall.
We do get the new era name tomorrow, right?
Yes, we do. We hear what the new emperor's name is going to be.
Exciting times.
Exciting times. And it's cherry blossom season too. Have you been out to see the cherry blossoms?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting with the Japan Cryptocurrency Business Association. If you look at the JVC and the history behind it, there were like two associations basically as a predecessor who also included everybody, included the exchanges, lawyers, lobbyists, and so on. And at the time, the FSA as a regulator, I think, was very clear in saying, well, first of all, we only need one organization, association as an SRO. And secondly, that should really only be the market participants and not kind of adjacent people. And that's kind of how then the JVCA was formed, which now includes, as you said, like only the exchanges and then aspiring exchanges as type 2 members. And now we have like the JCBA again, kind of, I wouldn't go as far as saying making the same mistakes, but if the FSA has said once, we only want to talk to really the exchanges as market participants and not to consultants, lawyers, etc. We're probably going to say it again.
Possibly.
Plus, then we have the JSDA, who has a somewhat rightful claim to this space and already representing kind of the market participants there. So it will be interesting to see how the dynamics work out there.
It will be. It will be.
The other thing, so because you mentioned the kind of the proprietary trading platform and the exchanges, if I'm not mistaken, there was a news just at the end of this week that TOCOM, the Tokyo Commodities Exchange, and the Tokyo Stock Exchange are going to merge, which means we really have only like one exchange group in Japan that dominates everything.
Yeah, JPX and TOCOM. Yes. Yeah. Well, one of the things I read the article in the Nikkei, so perhaps my translation or my understanding of it wasn't exactly clear. But one of the things they mentioned that as some of the other markets overseas, and they cited the CME in particular, while these exchanges were merging and taking advantage of this broad-based market in derivatives, the Japanese markets the stock exchanges have basically sat around and wasted 10 years of time.
Yeah.
So my guess is that's also a precursor for some larger mergers that are going to take place as this STO market does materialize. So I don't see how these can coexist separately. I think it's something where the overall securities industry is going to absorb all securities related business and have a level of guidance and compliance that is pretty much similar, equal for everybody.
I've got some fun TOCOM memories, like in a prior life. I think it was 2005 or 6. We actually supported building a trading business for TOCOM, and there was a time when there was really like a mom and pop exchange. And if you have like mom and pop traders and you bring a big institutional powerhouse to the market, you kind of can predict what the outcome is, and so it's probably one of the most profitable ventures for 12-18 months period that my prior employer had in this region.
It was a Goliath versus David, then a David versus Goliath.
yeah. So I think the
head
traders were very happy at that time. So
okay,
good old times. That was pre financial crisis.
A lot of things were pre-financial crisis. Yeah.
The coin topic is always an interesting one. I think respect Mike Hayamori as the CEO very much. We had him very early at the Tokyo FinTech meetup as a supporter, probably one of our best sessions. That was a month or two before they did their own ICO. And so it was also before we really hit the crypto bubble. And in these early days, Mike was already very strong on compliance and being kind of above the law and everything they're doing. So I think he always saw that as a differentiating factor. And so since that time, it's been a very friendly exchange for us. I think a very friendly group of people who also come with quite a bit of industry expertise on the classic, quote-unquote, financial markets. And so I feel a lot of respect for the team, and I'm always curiously following kind of what they're up to.
So how's that liquid exchange going now for Coin?
Yeah, so they had a meetup this week where they were hosting Orbs as a project. It's an Israeli project. And in any case, also Seth Melamed, who's the head of business development and sales at Coin, or Liquid, gave a brief update on the exchange overall, and it was quite interesting to see all the products they have built over the last 6 months. I would say they do claim to have about 70% of the BTC Japanese yen currency pair globally.
Wow.
So that's substantial. I think that goes hand in hand with the fee discount or free trading, so it's kind of buying market share, I guess. But that is, I would think that's the bulk of their volume. I think interesting thing is I recorded it, I put it out on the YouTube channel for everybody to watch, and if you go into the Telegram channel for Coin, the pundits have some interesting comments around this, because it seems like people were waiting for an update on World Book for a while. World Book being the idea of kind of the superstructure to aggregate liquidity across different trading venues, of which Liquid would be one, but it's open to others, and that hasn't materialized yet. And it seems like the community was waiting for an update. I was disappointed that it wasn't really included in that update this week as well. But naturally, Coin, like any other exchange in Japan or with a leg in Japan, has been under business improvement orders from the FSA, and they're still working through those. So any kind of plans and timelines that have been put out at the time of the ICO, I think with the CoinCheck hack, the subsequent inspection of the exchanges, and then the business improvement orders being issued, clearly the focus was on satisfying the regulator first. And so I can't speak, of course, on behalf of Coin on the state of their kind of endeavor, but it feels for me understandable that the World Book that might have been promised at a certain point in time is delayed or isn't here yet.
Wasn't that the general nature of the market when you do go out and raise $106 million or whatever they raised, that eventually there are people in the background kind of saying, hey, where's the cheese, right?
Yes.
And what is it? I think it was in November of 2017
I think that's right.
That they raised that money. So fair enough that you would expect some people saying or asking the question, what's going on? When am I going to see something? We've had the similar situation with Omise Go, for example. Omise Go raised, I think they were one of the first unicorns in this business, right? We'll have to check on that. Yeah. So they've taken a major league tumble, and at Brave New Coin, we had done a piece on them probably 2 weeks ago.
That's right.
About their upcoming exchange and the market expectations. So it's fair enough on the one hand, but then when you're kind of in the trenches trying to develop this technology, and then you've got interruptions from the market itself. The bull run turns into a bear run. Then you've got some regulations that come in on top of that kind of cleans out some of the vacuum cleaner salesmen, as I called them. But eventually there's expectations there, and so somehow these two forces need to meet. And my estimation is that Coin seemed like a very professional organization, only from the outside looking in, as is Omise Go. So I couldn't tell you which one or both of them if they're going to take off and hit the moon. But we'll see. This is all future considerations to consider.
Do you know how many employees Omise Go has? How many people working on the platform?
I do not.
Yeah.
I know they've got some people down in Bangkok.
Yeah.
They're sending people back and forth, at least to Bangkok. I don't know if that's where their major development is, but the people over in Dogenzaka appear to be sending some people down there and back.
Yeah.
So
I was reading a piece on Quadriga today, like one of these usual recap stories, and we won't go into Quadriga on
Did they actually find a body?
They found a body. It's a good question.
Or did they just send him back in a vase or something? I mean, it's another one of those things where you have to ask, you have to wonder. Was it $175 million or something?
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, when I first heard about it, I thought, well, it's so unfortunate that he died of some medical condition, which is on the tip of my tongue right now. I can't remember what it is, but I think it was Crohn's disease. I'll have to check that out. So anyway, this story I got was that he unfortunately died while he was in India, and the private keys died with him. But subsequently, people had the forensic experts came in and found out that the cold wallets that were supposed to have these keys didn't, or that were supposed to have the coins didn't have any.
Yes.
So where'd they go? Why did they? Who's got them? And it just makes you wonder: did the guy fake his own death? Was a body flown home, and did they do an autopsy? But if he died in India, maybe he's in ashes floating down the Ganges River.
Yeah, that's like, again, if you don't own the private key, you don't own the coins, right?
Yes.
Right. Where I wanted to head with this was like when Quadriga became the largest exchange in Canada with like 350,000 clients. It was like 2015, and they had 4 employees. So when you at least look into Japan and kind of the clampdown and strengthening of regulations we had seen here over the last year, we're looking at like multiple hundreds of employees for an exchange, right? So it feels like maybe not globally, but certainly in this jurisdiction, the times where you kind of run the exchange out of your living room, these times are over.
I think so. So what have we got coming up for this week? We've got tomorrow night. This is your event, FinTech Japan.
Yeah, I would say this one we co-promote. So it's like relevant, certainly, and of interest to our community. But it's getting a bit larger than our normal venues hold. So thankfully, the SBI and our 3 folks procured the venue and kind of taking care of most of the logistics, I would say. But yeah, still excited. 200 people registered.
This is the SBI R3, and you're going to have who from SBI?
Fernando and Richard Brown.
Okay.
So the 2 CTOs, the CTO for R3 globally and the CTO of the SBI R3 Japan joint venture.
Okay. Any expectations on what we should be hearing? Is it just going to be a standard sort of presentation?
I think it's more, it's a bit of a, say, staged fireside chat between the 2 gentlemen. I think there's lots of audience interaction in the end. And at the same time, it's kind of the launch party for the joint venture. So I think half the evening will be kind of their presentation engagement, and half will be kind of celebration, networking, and a few drinks as well.
Are they?
Yes.
Okay, good.
They are.
No, it's always nice when you go
Yes.
to one of these meetups and they end up with a little compai session at the end.
Yeah.
So
plenty of other meetups, I think, during the
well,
week,
this
of course.
weekend is the Team Z. This
Exactly.
next weekend is Team Z. It's a 2-day conference, and apparently there's plenty of tickets going around. And there's various nighttime activities. There's one apparently extreme VIP session that's going on, and from about 8 to 11 p.m. on Saturday night. We'll have to check that on Saturday evening, and they're selling tickets for 15,000. No, they're selling tickets for 50,000 yen.
Feels like early 2018.
Yes. No, I think I think we're beyond that now. I know that they want to showcase their speakers. I know they want to make money, and I don't have any problem with people wanting to make money or showcase their speakers. What I do have a problem with is a lot of these after parties are rather poorly attended. And a lot of that is a direct correlation to the expectations of the conference itself. So we're seeing a lot of these conferences, as we have over the last year. They come in, they want to charge you $1,000 to attend the conference, and then they want to have their little extras. Or you can just buy a ticket to the VIP sessions, and if the conference doesn't deliver, then the VIP session is not going to deliver. Yeah. That's just been my experience so far. There's nothing worse than when you get to the evening session and they've got a nice buffet meal there, and there's 30 people that show up.
True. And it feels like we're destroying the market for conferences a bit, right? Clearly there have been quite a number since the beginning of the year, even in Japan, but then in Hong Kong, in Korea, and Singapore as well. And so if you end up kind of giving the tickets away more or less kind of close to the conference, it just instills a behavior in the community that you shouldn't buy early, and you shouldn't buy with an early discount because you might get kind of a free deal closer to the conference themselves.
Well, I think one of the things that the conference market needs to understand is there is an expectation now amongst market participants that when they go and they take a day off work and they spend a couple $100 or more, that they're going to get some pretty good information. We're getting beyond that point when you're just going to hear a pitch contest, right? These, there's a lot of similarity in the pitch contests, and the conference that I thought was one of the best recently happened to be the what was it? Dainijukai Nihon Kinri something. It was the 20th Japan International Financial Summit, which I believe was over at the Royal Park Hotel. I might even be getting that name wrong. But that's when the deputy FSA director got up and gave the keynote speech, and there were about 400 or 500 people in that room. It was standing room only. So you had a major league speaker up there, and of course it was all in Japanese. I can't remember if they had an interpreting widget there, but he got up and he gave a very insightful sort of presentation. And one of the things is he reminded people of the distribution of individual financial assets throughout this market, and compared it to the bubble period of the late 80s, early 90s versus now. And some of the statistics he discussed were shocking, and we've probably heard these in various times along the way, but if I recall right, something in the neighborhood of 63% of individual financial assets are held amongst people 60 years and older. Okay, and because there's that sort of bulge bracket out there in their 60s and 70s, what you've got is all of the salesmen or sales staff at the mega banks have been catering all of their financial products to the people in the bulge brackets. Meanwhile, back in the 80s, when you went down to the old Mitsui Taiyo Kobe Bank, where I got my first account, I think it was, you'd walk in and they'd give you a little glass of green tea, and they'd give you 2 bags of tissue, and in 30 minutes after you gave them your passport and your Honko or whatever it was, you walked out with a bank account. But now the level of onboarding and compliance that's required, and the know your client issues has gotten so thick that it can take a couple of weeks to open up a bank account here. They have to send you something at home. You have to use you had to until last week or the week before use a Honko to actually stamp these forms.
Right.
And if you're going to open up a corporate account, it just takes longer. I think we're looking at a month or 5 weeks. So
and you might be declined without any explanation.
Oh, that could very well be, yes. And as that process has sort of embedded itself in the country here, it seems to me that some of the younger generation who, if you look at the charts, don't have the type of disposable cash as their parents' generation, nor do they don't have the type of cash, nor do they have the ability, because people haven't been really making all that much money here over the past 25 years. But with all of the financial products that are available, they still have to go through that onboarding process. So they have to take time off work. They have to go to the bank. They have to, if they want to get a CD that pays, 1%, 1.5% or something like that, it's a hassle. So meanwhile, the whole cryptocurrency wave has, that bull run sort of sprung up, and it encouraged a lot of people with small amounts of money to invest in something that was completely outside of the banking system. So what happened at this conference was you had one of the deputy directors of the FSA. He was encouraging the mega banks, and this appears to be a project that's already underway. He's encouraging them to sort of get together and sort of unify their onboarding and KYC process, because they effectively all they require the same amount of information and the same procedures. And why don't you just automate that? Why don't you simplify that down to a 20-minute process so that people can get into the system, and encourage them to start buying financial products. Meanwhile, as the whole crypto market opens up and you do get some securities related token opportunities, then these people might want to buy those.
Yes.
So there's a lot of thinking that still needs to be, for lack of a better word, thought out in order to spread the wealth around in Japan. So that was a very good conference, and I think it was $150 to $300, somewhere around there. So and they had the buffet afterwards. That was really good, and you got a chance to meet a lot of people. But there was no 50,000 yen after party, and you didn't have to walk around and try to get your time and to exchange cards with these speakers. They usually just sort of were there afterwards, and you were able to exchange a few words with them. So
cool.
Yeah.
I mean, on that topic, going away from the conferences, but like the KYC topic, essentially, I mean, we need to look the numbers up again, but it was at some point last year. We do have My Number here in Japan, but only like 20% of the people got their actual card or claimed their number, whatever it may be. And so if you compare it to a country of like 1.2 billion or so, whatever India is these days, and they have the equivalent, but they managed to kind of get everybody onto the system. If you did the same in a kind of fairly sophisticated technically and infrastructure-rich country like Japan, you should be able to get everybody equipped with a My Number card, and basically a digital identity that's universally usable, right? The barrier should be relatively low, one would think.
Yeah, but in all that, there's one word that you said that really kind of resonates. It's called should. Should. In the U.S., they made the Social Security system compulsory, and I just sense that there's a lot of pushback on that whole My Number. Who's going to be in charge of it? Who's going to be able to keep it safe for you? People just don't want to give up their personal information, particularly with the type of security that we have in Japan. And even when what was it last year, the chief bureaucrat, who's I think he's a politician, one of the guys, a chief cabinet secretary for cybersecurity, or
didn't have a
one
PC.
of the cabinet members, he didn't even know how to use a PC, and he's in charge of cybersecurity. So yeah, these things are, every once in a while you get a little bit of a surprise.
This was our first episode of Scott and Nobs in Tokyo, the Tokyo FinTech podcast. And we'll be back next week after this big conference that we talked about with a recap of what we've seen during the whole week. And so please stay tuned.
And okay, Norbert, that kind of finishes it up for today. I appreciate you coming over and chatting with me. This is Scott and Norbert signing off from Azabu Juban.